Lego and superhero movies are some of my favorite pastimes, but when watching these movies and shows, I noticed how much these heroes all rely on tech. From the small stuff to the people you may not even consider superheroes, in this video I'm building some of the most popular tech that helps these heroes do their thing. I've ordered so many pieces for this video, so smash subscribe and take a look here. Maybe you can guess what's coming up. And where better to start than the most iconic? I think everybody knows the arc reactor at this point, and the fact that it's been a staple of the MCU and used in so many different ways, to the point where there's several different versions of it now. But if you ask me, there's nothing more recognizable than the classic arc reactor, so this is the one that I think we're gonna build. Now, if you've never had a proper look at the arc reactor, to break it down, at its basics, it's just a bunch of rings stacked on top of each other. And if you didn't know, making a bunch of different sized rings stacked on top of each other is actually pretty difficult to do in Lego. So we're gonna have to pull out the fancy techniques to get this one done. And I think starting with a bunch of round plates and building off of this, with different round elements, we can make a start on the shape we actually need. Building up the base, you can see that I've added a lot of details that, to be fair, I think are gonna be covered up. But all of this underlayer is placing the studs in the areas that we're gonna need them to hopefully make this model as strong as possible. As well as that, when I want people to be looking into this model, I want each layer to look like it's doing something different. As for the back half, it's a different story. It's quite thick with a black cage that looks like it tapers off. With the help of these brackets and one of these pieces, we can attach these arm pieces in this configuration 8 times to build up the shape of the cage. But moving back to the front of the model, we have a lot of detail to build up, and I'm going to use this cool grey piece with a fancy blue dish in the center to start building up some of the detail. But you might be asking, how are we going to do the wires and the blue rings around the edges? This is one of the most iconic bits of the arc reactor, and there's no gigantic trans blue dish we can use, and even if there was, it wouldn't be this thick. But if we use this configuration of pieces 12 times and these brackets around the edges, we can build up a really cool ring around the structure we already have to create and finish the iconic arc reactor. And even though we didn't have to build it in a cave, it still turned out fantastic and looks almost as good as you pressing that subscribe button. In fact, did you know we're only 5,000 subscribers away from 100,000 subs? So show a friend if they'll like the content and tell them to subscribe. I appreciate every single one of you guys, but this is just the start. One of the coolest shows when I was growing up was always Ben 10. And even though it was technically alien tech, the omnitrix is always something I've wanted to build out of Lego in 1:1 size. And when looking into ways to potentially build this watch out of Lego, I stumbled across these hinges. So starting with the bottom of the watch, I'm going to build it up in panels, starting with this bottom panel and these two side panels. Now these panels are fairly easy to build up, but they are mostly black, so they are quite difficult to see here on camera. But if I'm honest, this is the easy part. I just need to make up enough panels to cover my wrist, and I'm even using these 1x2 door plates to try and cover up the gaps between the panels. But what I'm actually worried about is the top half of the watch. There's so much detail here that I'm just not sure how we're going to make. For example, if you look at the top of the watch, you can see this pipe leading up to the face. And now that we have most of the watch built, I don't really know how we are going to add these pipes. I first tried looking into pieces like these, so they would actually look like little pipes coming off of the face of the watch. But they ended up looking really thick and just didn't really give me that feel that I wanted. They ended up coming off of the watch too much and it ended up looking really silly. But what I did end up doing is on the top panel of the watch, I ended up using 4 Among Us pieces sticking out from the watch face so I could attach these macaroni pieces. Now I know they're not cylindrical, but these macaroni pieces at a slight angle look much more like the pipes than actual pipes did. Now there is probably a way to do this, but I am happy with how this looks. But obviously the most iconic part of this watch has to be the face. The black and green hourglass design was the most awesome part about it, and it was carried over to every future version of the watch. To help build up the face, we're going to use these relatively new triangle tiles. These will be the key into making that pattern, along with these giant wheel arch pieces. And with the final few details, the build is complete. But what about magical tech? You can technically argue that a Harry Potter wand is effectively the technology of the wizarding world. And I know it's a bit of a stretch, Harry Potter isn't exactly a superhero, but a flying car is pretty damn cool in my opinion. To the point where I'm going to be giving away a bunch of Harry Potter sets over on my Whatnot stream on Friday, September 20th, as well as selling a bunch of Harry Potter figures all starting at just $1. If you don't know what Whatnot is, it's basically a live auctioning site. Think of it almost as a mix between Twitch and eBay. I can use Whatnot to sell some of my personal collection, and I'm doing a bunch of differently themed streams, with the next one being specifically Harry Potter. So if that sounds like it might interest you, head to the link in the description and get £10 off of my stream or anybody else's stream you might find on there. And don't forget to head over to my page and bookmark my stream so you don't miss it. Thanks again to Whatnot for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to some real tech. I don't know if we could make this video without talking about Spider-Man. The 90s show introduced me to the wonderful world of web shooters, and although Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, which was the Spider-Man I grew up with, had organic web shooters, both Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man all used mechanical web shooters to help them swing around. And there's no other suit full of tech other than the Stark suit. I would even argue that this suit has more tech in it than the Iron Spider. Now this suit gets a lot of hate, but if you ask me, it comes with some really clean web shooters that I think would look awesome in LEGO. So measuring out how long I wanted these on my forearm, I got to building. Well, thankfully, there's not a lot of colour on these web shooters, but as I wanted them to be wearable, I needed to start by getting LEGO around my wrist. But as we've just built a really cool watch using this clip technique, I don't see why we can't use the same technique here as well. The only thing we need to do is work out how we're going to make this really unique shape, as opposed to something as simple as a watch. I started by drawing out the shape on a piece of paper and forming it around my wrist. I know these pieces are going to be more rigid in the end, but I thought at least it would help me know the shape I was trying to make. But just trying to build these shapes up and make them a bit thicker, I treated these the same as the watch, just making this top section a bit bigger with some more fancy shapes. The centerpiece of the shooter was made by using a 4x16 stud long area, but I needed to make sure I was leaving enough room for these awesome web cartridges. I know they're really simple and basic looking, but they are removable, and these are exactly how they look in the film, even down to these surprisingly expensive red ingot pieces. But working our way up to the nozzle, I've used a tube and a cone piece to show where the webs come out, and with the final few details, we have a really nice looking web shooter. But here's the thing, yes, I know, this looks pretty awesome, but we can't just have one web shooter. So funnily enough, I went out and I bought pieces for 2 of them. It'll save you having to watch me build the other one, but if you ask me, there is still something missing. Now, as we're building the Stark suit, and it's obviously packed with tech, from a parachute to a heater, to, if you ask me, one of the coolest things, and that's even used in the film for a significant amount of time, and it's this little guy. And if you ask me, this is one of my favourite designs we've seen from the Spiderdrone over the years of Spider-Man we've had. But one of the biggest problems I think we're going to encounter when building this guy is his scale. It's a rather small drone, and it's packed with detail. So first off, I did a bunch of research. I ended up finding as many pictures and watching the film as many times as I could. And thankfully, the PS4 version of Spider-Man ended up using this drone for one of its Miles Morales sections, and I managed to find a 3D model of it. But one of the biggest helps I actually found was that Hot Toys made a 1:1 scale version of the Spiderdrone for one of their special editions of the figure. And using this as a guide, I had a fantastic starting point to make ours. And as I wanted to make it as posable as possible, I tried to incorporate as many hinges and ball joints as I could. And although I think it might look a bit funny right now, as soon as I add these red and black legs, I think you'll start to be able to see the silhouette of the Spiderdrone. I know it's not a massive detail, but I really think it brings this set together, and this Spiderdrone plus the Stark web shooters I think will make a fantastic display. But even though this video has some of the coolest superhero tech in it, I can't think of another cooler piece of tech than an Iron Man suit. Now I know we've already built the arc reactor, and if I'm honest, I think a full Iron Man suit might take up too much room in my house. But if you ask me, it's never off the table, so smash like. I still do think it would be cool to at least build the helmet. And thanks to a company called Builds, I think we actually can. They've made an Iron Man helmet that 1 looks awesome and 2 is 1:1 scale. The only problem is that I have 1 day left to film this video and it's 2,500 pieces. But getting started, this was certainly overwhelming, but thankfully they do put their pieces in numbered bags, so it should be alright. But the way this is being constructed is giving me mad Statue of Liberty vibes, and that certainly wasn't simple to build, so I don't think this will either. The shaping is looking really good, and the main reason I wanted to build this was mainly because recently I got the Black Panther mask, as unlike a lot of others, I was a big fan of it. But the main problem I ended up running into it was just too small to be considered 1:1. I know it's a LEGO product, and I know they'll be working with restrictions, but as you guys know, I love working to some sort of scale. And with this video being all 1:1 builds, I would have certainly loved to have included that build in this type of a video. I feel like this helmet could have been done at 1:1 scale if it didn't include the arms, and it fell into a weird area of it just being too small to be considered 1:1 and didn't need to be that big. I feel like if it had been 1:1, it still would have been a bad set, don't get me wrong. It certainly would have been more desirable for people who actually cared about having a bust of a statue that big in their house. So when Bricker kindly offered to send this one out to me, I of course wanted to show it off to you guys. Now they haven't paid me to say anything about this model, my opinions are still my own, but they did send this out to me free of charge, so make of that what you will. I can only really tell you about my experience so far, and overall it's been pretty good. And with the final product coming together, the only thing I can do now is add the lights. But some people might be thinking, you've made so much tech from Marvel in this video, and you'd be right. There are so many more superheroes that rely on tech to help them fight crime, and funnily enough, I did make one more model in this video that if you want to see, you can check out the extended edition over on my Patreon. I'm really trying to step up the Patreon content and give you guys more than just early videos, so if you were interested in making any of these models, I provided the studio file plus some basic instructions, which means if you're interested, you can upload these to Bricklink and build them yourself. I've released these for all Legend and Above and Beyond patrons, and I want to start doing this with a lot of the models that I make in the future. As well as this, I'm currently working on a Patreon exclusive series about how I make models that'll be exclusive for the people over there. So if you want to find out how I make models and the best tips and tricks that I can give you to make your models even better, consider becoming a Patreon along with these people. The series isn't out yet, but it's looking really cool. I'll let you guys know again when it is actually out, but I just want to extend a massive thank you to the people over here who are already paying to help try and keep this channel a bit more self-sustaining. And I just want to drop a quick reminder to subscribe. We're so close to 100k, and I appreciate every single one of you guys for helping me even get to this point. And if you want to check out how I made the stand for this spider drone, go and check out this video over on my other channel, TommyCBricks. Yeah, you didn't know I had another channel? If you didn't know, that's where I've been this entire time. Go and check out all the content waiting for you over there.